A strange object fell from the sky, but what emerged was far more terrifying than anyone imagined. Whispers, vanishings, and secrets buried deep in the woods still haunt Kecksburg to this day. Are you ready to discover the truth? The air was cold that night. The Pennsylvania hills were wrapped in silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. It was December 9th, 1965. A streak of fire tore across the sky. Neighbors rushed outside. Children pointed upward, their small hands trembling. A glowing object trailed smoke, brighter than any star, before it vanished into the dark woods near Kecksburg. The ground shook faintly. Animals scattered. Dogs barked wildly, pulling at their chains as if they sensed something unnatural. A deep metallic thud echoed, then silence swallowed the night. Curious residents hurried toward the forest. The air smelled of burnt metal and damp earth. Branches snapped under their boots as they followed the trail of broken limbs and scorched brush. The woods felt alive, as if holding its breath. Then they saw it, a massive object half buried in the soil, bronze in colour, shaped like an acorn. Strange markings ran along its surface, etched deep, almost glowing faintly in the dim light. People whispered. Some stepped closer. The heat radiating from the craft was intense, forcing them back. A low hum vibrated through the ground like a living pulse. Suddenly, headlights cut through the trees. Military trucks arrived, their engines rumbling. Men in dark uniforms leapt out, ordering everyone away. Their voices were sharp, commanding, filled with urgency and authority. Witnesses protested, but the soldiers closed ranks. The object was quickly covered with a tarp. A flabard truck rumbled into place, chains clanked, metal groaned, and the acorn-shaped craft was hauled away under the watch of armed guards. The woods grew silent once more, but the memory remained. Some swore they felt the ground tremble long after the trucks had gone. Others claimed they heard a faint ringing in their ears, as if the object had left something behind. No explanation was given. The official story spoke of a meteor, but the witnesses remembered the markings. They remembered the heat, and they remembered the fear. In the weeks that followed, strange men visited the town. They asked questions. They warned people to remain silent. Some who spoke too much were said to have vanished into the shadows of secrecy. The woods in Kecksburg still stand today. Quiet, peaceful, yet many believe something remains buried deep beneath the soil, something not of this world, and on certain nights when the air is cold and the stars burn bright, locals whisper of a hum that returns to the ground, a steady vibration, soft but undeniable, as if the acorn-shaped craft is still alive, waiting. The hum was faint at first, almost too soft to notice, but those who lived closest to the woods could feel it through the floorboards of their homes. A trembling underfoot, steady and rhythmic, like the beating of a hidden heart. One night, a farmer named Samuel rose from bed. The vibration rattled the glass on his nightstand. The air smelled faintly of ozone, sharp and electric. His cows lowed nervously in the barn, hooves striking against wooden stalls. Samuel lit his lantern. The glow flickered, fighting against the thick black of the forest beyond. As he stepped outside, the cold air bit at his skin. The hum grew louder. Through the trees, a strange light shimmered. Not the soft yellow of fire, not the silver of the moon. It pulsed in waves, blue and gold, washing over the trunks of trees like liquid. He followed it. Branches clawed at his coat. Leaves crunched underfoot. The deeper he went, the stronger the smell of burning metal became, mixed with the damp scent of moss and soil. Then he reached the clearing, the same clearing where the object had once rested. The earth still bore the scar of its arrival, blackened and torn. But now something stirred beneath the soil. The ground bulged upward. Cracks spread outward in jagged lines. A low groan, like stone grinding against stone, rose from below. The pulsing light seeped through the cracks, illuminating the forest floor. Samuel's breath caught in his throat. The air grew thick, heavy, almost hard to breathe. A metallic taste spread across his tongue, sharp and bitter. His lantern flickered once, then went out. The hum became a roar. The soil split open, and from the darkness beneath, something began to rise. The hum was faint at first, almost too soft to notice, but those who lived closest to the woods could feel it through the floorboards of their homes. A trembling underfoot, steady and rhythmic, like the beating of a hidden heart. One night a farmer named Samuel rose from bed. The vibration rattled the glass on his nightstand. The air smelled faintly of ozone, sharp and electric. His cows lowed nervously in the barn, hooves striking against wooden stalls. Samuel lit his lantern. The glow flickered, fighting against the thick black of the forest beyond. As he stepped outside, the cold air bit at his skin. The hum grew louder. Through the trees, a strange light shimmered. Not the soft yellow of fire, not the silver of the moon. It pulsed in waves blue and gold, washing over the trunks of trees like liquid. He followed it. Branches clawed at his coat, leaves crunched underfoot. The deeper he went, the stronger the smell of burning metal became, mixed with the damp scent of moss and soil. Then he reached the clearing, the same clearing where the object had once rested. The earth still bore the scar of its arrival, blackened and torn. But now something stirred beneath the soil. The ground bulged upward, cracks spread outward in jagged lines. A low groan, like stone grinding against stone, rose from below. The pulsing light seeped through the cracks, illuminating the forest floor. Samuel's breath caught in his throat. The air grew thick, heavy, almost hard to breathe. A metallic taste spread across his tongue, sharp and bitter. His lantern flickered once, then went out. The hum became a roar. The soil split open, and from the darkness beneath, something began to rise. The light swallowed the clearing. Samuel raised an arm to shield his face, but it was useless. The glow burned through his eyelids, painting red veins across his vision. The ground convulsed. Roots tore free from the soil. Rocks split apart as though struck by invisible hammers. The forest groaned like a wounded beast. From the fissure the shape unfolded. Not a craft, not a machine, something stranger, metal and flesh intertwined, glistening as though wet. Its surface pulsed with veins of light. Each throb sent a wave of static through the air. Samuel's hair lifted on end. His skin prickled with cold fire. The smell of ozone was overpowering, sharp enough to sting his nose. The voice returned. Deeper now, layered with countless whispers, as though 1,000 mouths spoke at once. We were buried, but not broken. Samuel's body shook. The words were not only in his mind, they reverberated inside his bones. Every syllable pressed against him, heavy, crushing. The thing rose higher. Its markings shifted again, flowing like liquid across its surface. They formed symbols Samuel could almost recognize: crosses, spirals, eyes. The pattern seared into his memory with every glance. A piercing cry erupted. Not mechanical, not human. It was the sound of something ancient, something awakening. The trees around the clearing bent inward, their branches cracking under the pressure of unseen force. Samuel tried to run. His legs refused. The ground clutched at him, soft as tar, pulling him down inch by inch. His lantern lay shattered, glass sparkling like cold stars at his feet. The light flared one final time. It spilled upward, tearing into the sky. Clouds swirled violently, glowing with unnatural fire, and above the forest something answered the call. The sky trembled with light. Bolts of blue fire licked across the clouds. The air shook with a low, rolling thunder, though no storm had formed. Samuel's breath came in shallow gasps. The force pressing down on him grew heavier, as though the very sky had weight. His ears rang with a sound too deep to name, vibrating in his skull like a buried drum. Then he saw them, shadows moving inside the storm, shapes vast and unsteady, twisting against the glow of the torn clouds. Not birds, not planes, something far larger. A beam of golden light shot downward, striking the clearing. It burned through the soil, illuminating the fractured object that had risen from below. The markings on its surface flared in response, answering the signal. The ground heaved. The fissures spread wider. The forest floor split apart, sending dirt and roots cascading into the pit. A stench of sulphur filled the air, sharp and choking. Samuel covered his mouth, but it did little. His lungs burned. His vision blurred at the edges, darkening as though the night itself were closing in. The voice returned louder than before. Every word was a tremor, rattling through the marrow of his bones. The sky remembers. The earth remembers. You will remember. A column of energy surged upward, connecting earth and sky. The shapes within the storm bent toward it, drawn like moth to flame. Their outlines shimmered, limbs too many to count, wings that bent in unnatural angles, eyes glowing like molten glass. Samuel tried to scream. Only a broken whisper left his throat. The tar-like ground pulled harder, dragging him knee deep into the soil. The cold mud wrapped around him like living chains. Above, the storm cracked open. Through the jagged tear in the clouds, something vast began to descend. The tear in the sky widened. Light poured down in cascading streams, blinding and searing. The forest glowed white, every branch and stone burning with sharp edges of shadow. Samuel's body shook violently. The mud gripped him to the waist now, cold and pulsing like it had a heartbeat. His fingernails clawed at the earth, but the soil swallowed his hands, pulling him deeper. The air thickened. Each breath scraped his throat like smoke. A metallic taste coated his tongue, bitter and hot. His ears filled with a low hum that climbed higher, sharper, until it pierced into silence. Then he heard it, a new sound, heavy, slow, like 1,000 drums beating from above. The descending shape broke through the clouds. It was not a craft, it was not a creature. It was both, vast, spiralling, alive with burning veins of light. Its surface rippled as though it breathed. Dozens of eyes, golden and unblinking, opened across its form. Each one turned downward, fixing on the clearing, fixing on him. Samuel's heart hammered. The weight of those eyes pressed against his chest, forcing the air from his lungs. He tried to scream again, but his voice was crushed flat by the pressure. The ground erupted. Flames tore through the fissures. Trees splintered and fell, their trunks snapping like brittle bones. The object that had risen from the earth now pulsed in rhythm with the colossal shape above, the two bound by a living thread of light. The voice came once more, but this time it was not inside Samuel's head. It rolled across the sky, thunderous, impossible, shaking the world to its core. The seal is broken. The mud swallowed him to his chest. The light burned his skin, crawling like fire under his flesh. His eyes blurred with tears, but he could still see the shape lowering closer. Its shadow engulfed the clearing. The hum became a roar, and as the air tore open around him, Samuel realized he was not alone. Shapes were moving in the light, stepping through. The shapes emerged from the light. They were tall, impossibly thin, their limbs bending at unnatural angles. Their skin glowed faintly, pale like moonlit glass. Each step left a ripple in the soil, as though the ground itself recoiled. Samuel's breath froze in his chest. The mud gripped him tighter, rising to his shoulders. The cold pressed against his ribs, squeezing the life from him. He could no longer move. The figures circled the fractured object, their heads tilted in unison, studying it with eyes that glowed like molten amber. No mouth moved, yet a chorus of whispers filled the air. It was a language too vast, too layered, and it scraped across Samuel's skull like blades. He squeezed his eyes shut. The whispers grew louder. They crawled under his skin, vibrating through his bones, bleeding into thoughts that were not his own. Visions flashed. Endless fields of black stone, skies torn with fire, towers of metal rising from oceans that boiled, a world that was not Earth. Samuel gasped and forced his eyes open. One of the beings now stood inches from him. Its face was blank, smooth as polished stone, save for the glowing eyes that pierced through him. Heat radiated from its body, searing his skin even in the frigid night air. The voice thundered again, rolling across the clearing, vibrating the trees until bark cracked and split. Their world must remember. The figures raised their arms. Light spilled from their hands, weaving into the threads that bound earth and sky. The fractured object beneath the soil pulsed brighter, responding like a living heart. The storm above twisted tighter, swirling into a vast spiral that stretched beyond sight. Samuel's body sank deeper. The mud reached his neck, his chin. The cold, wet soil pressed against his lips, filling his mouth with the taste of iron and ash. He choked, gasping for air while the beings moved closer. Their eyes glowed hotter, burning like suns. The earth groaned, splitting wider as if the planet itself was breaking open. And from the storm above, a final shape began to descend, vast, blinding, endless. The sky tore wider, a scream of wind ripped through the forest, bending trees until they snapped like brittle twigs. The spiral above glowed white hot, spilling fire across the clouds. The descending shape blotted out the stars. Its outline shifted, never the same for more than a second. A vast wing, a writhing mass of tendrils, a crown of burning eyes. Samuel could barely breathe. The mud closed over his chin, cold and suffocating. His heart pounded against the pressure, each beat louder than the storm. The smaller beings raised their arms higher. The fractured object below erupted with light. A sound followed, low, metallic, and endless. It was like a bell rung at the center of the earth, shaking the ground and splitting stone. Samuel's teeth rattled. His vision blurred. He felt blood rise in his throat, hot and metallic, burning as he swallowed it back. The colossal figure lowered closer. Its light scorched the clearing, turning night to day. The trees combusted, crackling into ash before collapsing into the soil. The air was thick with smoke, heavy with the scent of burning wood and sulfur. Then silence. The wind ceased. The storm froze in place. Even the earth itself seemed to hold its breath. The being hovered above, its countless eyes locked upon the clearing. A voice unlike any before filled the air. It was not a word. It was a command. The smaller figures stopped moving. The whispers ceased. The light between earth and sky trembled, stretched taut, waiting. Samuel felt his body sink lower. The mud was at his mouth now, pressing inside, gritty and bitter. His lungs screamed for air. He tried to fight, to thrash, but the weight was too strong. The final words came, shattering the silence. The world must awaken. The ground collapsed beneath him. He fell into blackness, the roar of light and fire consuming everything above. And as he plunged deeper, he felt the heat of something vast stirring in the dark beneath the earth. Samuel fell through the darkness. The air rushed past him, cold and heavy, smelling of stone and rust. His body twisted in the void, weightless yet pulled downward by something unseen. Then, impact. The ground caught him like ice. The surface was hard, smooth, metallic. His palm stung as he pushed himself up, his breath ragged and echoing in the hollow space. He looked around. The cavern stretched endlessly, walls glistening with veins of dim light. They pulsed slowly, like the heartbeat of something alive. Every pulse filled the air with a low hum that sank into his bones. Samuel staggered forward. The floor beneath him shifted, softening with each step, as though the metal itself was breathing. The scent of burning oil and wet earth clung to his nostrils. The taste of ash lingered on his tongue. A sound rose behind him. Not footsteps, not whispers. A dragging like chains pulled across steel. He turned. Shapes moved in the distance. Tall, skeletal figures, their bodies woven from light and shadow, approached slowly. Their eyes glowed faintly, each step measured, deliberate. Samuel's chest tightened. He tried to run, but the ground rippled beneath him, slowing his movement as if he were running through water. The figures did not hurry. They simply followed, relentless. The hum in the cavern deepened. The The walls trembled. From above, streaks of light bled through cracks in the stone, dripping downward like molten glass. Each drop hissed as it struck the floor, sending sparks across the surface. Then the voice came again. Not from above, not from within his head. It came from everywhere, layered and vast, filling the cavern with a weight that crushed the air. You were brought below to witness. You were brought below to remember. The floor split open before him. A chasm yawned wide, glowing with fire from far beneath. And deep within that fire something stirred, something bound in chains that glowed like stars, straining against them with every pulse of light. Samuel's breath caught. The chains rattled. The fire roared. And then one link snapped. The sound of the breaking chain echoed like thunder. It rolled through the cavern, shaking dust and shards of stone from the ceiling. Samuel covered his ears, but the vibration rattled inside his skull, sharp and endless. The glow from the fire grew brighter. It spilled upward, painting the walls in molten gold. The chain's shape below shifted, vast and ungraspable, like a mountain trying to rise. Each movement sent tremors racing through the floor. Samuel stumbled backward. The heat struck him like a furnace, scorching his skin, filling his lungs with air that tasted of ash and iron. His eyes watered, blurring the impossible sight below. Through the haze he saw its form, half machine, half something alive. Its surface red. Metal bent and twisted as though it were muscle and bone. A massive eye opened within the fire. It burned white, brighter than the sun, and fixed directly on him. Samuel's knees buckled. The weight of that gaze crushed his chest, forcing him flat to the trembling floor. His heartbeat stuttered, sensing with the pulse of the chained being. Every thud echoed through his ribs, threatening to tear him apart. Another chain cracked. Sparks rained into the fire. The skeletal figures behind him stopped moving, lowering their heads as if in worship. Their whispers returned, rising in waves, layered and discordant. The seal fails, the seal fails. The walls shook violently. Veins of light split open, spilling rivers of molten glow that flowed toward the chasm. The cavern smelled of burning stone and scorched flesh, though no bodies burned. The air itself seemed alive, thick, pressing tighter with each breath. Samuel tried to crawl away. His hands scraped across the breathing floor, slick with heat and trembling with every tremor. The whispers grew louder, merging into a single voice, booming and absolute. It rises. The final chains groaned, stretching, cracking. The roar from below shook the cavern like the end of the world. And as the last link snapped, the fire erupted upwards, swallowing everything in its path. From the chasm, the bound thing rose free. Its form stretched into the light, vast enough to blot out the cavern itself. The ground convulsed. The air turned to flame. And Samuel realized the world above would feel this awakening. The fire climbed higher, clawing at the cavern roof. Stone cracked and split apart, raining shards that hissed as they struck the molten floor. The air pulsed with heat so intense it felt alive, pressing against Samuel's skin like burning hands. The creature rose further. Its body was endless, shifting between steel and flesh, light and shadow. Veins of molten fire ran along its form, glowing brighter with every movement. Each step shook the earth like a hammer against the bones of the world. Samuel's body trembled. His lungs screamed for air, each breath tasting of smoke and iron. Sweat poured down his face, stinging his eyes. Yet he could not look away. The massive eye turned again, locking onto him. This time, it was not only sight, it was weight, it was command. His mind quivered beneath it, thoughts unravelling into static. The skeletal figures knelt as one. Their whispers became chants. The sound filled the cavern, deep and resonant, vibrating the very air. Awaken, awaken, awaken. The creature's chains fell away, clattering into the fire with a deafening roar. Its roar followed, low, endless, so vast that the stone itself seemed to bend. The walls shivered, veins of light bursting outward, flooding the chamber in golden fire. Samuel stumbled to the edge of the chasm. The ground buckled beneath his hands, hot and slick. Below, the creature's form stretched upward, higher, as though no end existed. The cavern was too small to contain it. The roof began to give way. Cracks tore across the stone ceiling, spilling dust and rock into the glowing abyss. Through the opening, Samuel saw night sky, clouds twisting in a spiral above the forest, answering the rise from below. The voice thundered again, but now it came from both above and below. The seal is broken. The earth will remember. Samuel screamed, his voice ripped away by the roar of collapsing stone. The cavern split apart, walls crumbling as rivers of fire surged outward, and through the falling rock, the colossal shape surged toward the surface, unstoppable. The cavern collapsed around him. Stone shattered like glass, each crack echoing louder than thunder. Samuel clung to the trembling floor, his fingernails tearing as he tried to hold on. The fire surged upward. It poured through the collapsing ceiling, a river of molten light tearing a path to the surface. The air was unbearable, searing his lungs with every breath. The scent of sulphur, ash, and something older filled his senses. The creature rose higher, its vast body forced through the crumbling earth, tearing mountains of stone aside as though they were dust. Every movement was a quake, each pulse of its glowing veins shaking the bones of the world. Samuel was lifted with it. The ground beneath him tilted, cracked, and carried him upward on a rising slab of stone. He clutched it desperately, skin blistering against the heat. Above, the night sky split open. The spiral storm widened, its clouds spinning faster, drawn into the endless light below. Bolts of fire streaked outward, painting the horizon with blinding arcs. The forest burned in silence, trees collapsing into glowing ash. Then the surface shattered. Samuel was hurled into the open air, the slab beneath him breaking apart. He tumbled through smoke, the wind howling, sparks stinging his skin. The ground rushed toward him, but he never struck it. He hovered, suspended in the storm, his body wrapped in unseen force. The colossal creature towered behind him, its form blotting out the sky, its eye burning brighter than the sun. The skeletal beings emerged from the fissures, carried upward by rivers of light. They spread across the forest, their bodies glowing, their voices rising in unison. The chant shook the heavens. Awaken the forgotten, awaken the bound. Samuel's mind cracked beneath the sound. Visions flooded him again, oceans boiling, cities swallowed by flame, skies ripped open to endless night. And in every vision, the eye was there, staring back at him. The voice returned, closer now, surrounding him, filling every corner of his being. You are the witness. You are the key. The storm twisted tighter. The light grew unbearable. And as the creature stretched to its full height, touching both earth and sky, Samuel realized this was not its awakening, it was its return. The storm raged above, swallowing the stars. Lightning coiled downward in spirals of gold and blue, striking the ground with deafening cracks. The air was thick with static, each spark raising Samuel's hair and burning his skin. The creature loomed, its vast frame stretching into the sky. Its veins glowed like rivers of molten fire, pulsing in rhythm with the storm. Every pulse sent shockwaves through the earth, toppling what remained of the forest. Samuel floated higher, bound by the invisible force that gripped him. His arms flailed, but his body did not obey. The pressure held him still, chest heaving against an unseen weight. The taste of copper filled his mouth. The skeletal beings below spread outward in formation. Their chants grew louder, rolling like thunder through the valley. Each syllable vibrated in his bones, threatening to splinter him from the inside. Then the creature spoke again, not in a whisper, not in thunder. It spoke through the storm. We were sealed. We were betrayed. We return. The words shook the clouds into new shapes, rings within rings, spinning faster, glowing brighter. From the center of the storm, a void began to form. A perfect circle, darker than night, hung in the air like an open wound. Samuel's eyes widened. The void pulled at him, tugging at his body, dragging at his very breath. He screamed, but the wind swallowed his voice. The skeletal figures raised their arms toward the circle. Threads of light spilled from their bodies, feeding into the void. The air smelled of burning iron, sharp and acrid, clawing at his lungs. The creature's massive eye turned once more. It fixed on Samuel, unblinking, endless. The force around him tightened, dragging him closer to the void. You are the key. You will open the way. The void expanded, swallowing the storm's center, bleeding darkness into the sky. Samuel's body shook violently as the pull grew stronger, tearing at his flesh, pulling him toward the circle. The valley roared with fire and thunder, and as the last trees crumbled into ash, something vast began to push through the void. The void widened, its edges rippled like liquid shadow, bending the storm inward. The sky shrieked with a sound that was not thunder but tearing, fabric rending, reality splitting. Samuel's body lurched forward. The pull was relentless, dragging him closer to the circle of darkness. His skin burned as invisible threads clawed at him, pulling layer by layer. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, each beat louder than the last. The skeletal figures fell to their knees. Their voices rose in unison, chanting words that split the air like shards of glass. The ground shook beneath their rhythm, each syllable a hammer strike against the bones of the earth. The creature towered above, its eye glowing hotter, brighter. The veins along its body pulsed faster, spilling arcs of fire into the storm. Its voice rolled like an ocean, endless and consuming. Through him the gate shall break. Through him we return. Samuel screamed, but the sound twisted as it left his throat, echoing back distorted, not his own. The force pulled harder. His arms stretched forward, trembling violently, as though his body no longer belonged to him. The taste of blood filled his mouth, sharp and metallic. From within the void something stirred. A shape vast and coiled, larger than the storm itself. It pressed against the darkness like a shadow against glass. Every movement sent ripples of black fire spilling across the sky. The valley collapsed further. Hills sank. Rivers boiled. The air itself bent, colours bleeding into one another until the world seemed to fracture. Samuel's eyes locked on the void, and for a single moment he saw it clearly. A face, or something like a face, endless eyes. A maw stretching wider than the horizon. A presence so immense it drowned thought, crushed will, erased identity. The skeletal figures cried out as one. Their voices split the air, ripping through Samuel's chest. The ground opened beneath them, spilling rivers of light into the void. The shadow within pressed harder. The circle tore wider, and Samuel felt the truth. He was not being pulled into the void. The void was being pulled through him. The void widened. Its edges rippled like liquid shadow, bending the storm inward. The sky shrieked with a sound that was not thunder but tearing, fabric rending, reality splitting. Samuel's body lurched forward. The pull was relentless, dragging him closer to the circle of darkness. His skin burned as invisible threads clawed at him, pulling layer by layer. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, each beat louder than the last. The skeletal figures fell to their knees. Their voices rose in unison, chanting words that split the air like shards of glass. The ground shook beneath their rhythm, each syllable a hammer strike against the bones of the earth. The creature towered above, its eye glowing hotter, brighter. The veins along its body pulsed faster, spilling arcs of fire into the storm. Its voice rolled like an ocean, endless and consuming. Through him, the gate shall break. Through him, we return, Samuel screamed, but the sound twisted as it left his throat, echoing back distorted, not his own. The force pulled harder. His arms stretched forward, trembling violently, as though his body no longer belonged to him. The taste of blood filled his mouth, sharp and metallic. From within the void something stirred, a shape vast and coiled, larger than the storm itself. It pressed against the darkness like a shadow against glass. Every movement sent ripples of black fire spilling across the sky. The valley collapsed further, hills sank, rivers boiled, the air itself bent, colours bleeding into one another until the world seemed to fracture. Samuel's eyes locked on the void, and for a single moment he saw it clearly. A face, or something like a face. Endless eyes, a maw stretching wider than the horizon, a presence so immense it drowned thought, crushed will, erased identity. The skeletal figures cried out as one. Their voices split the air, ripping through Samuel's chest. The ground opened beneath them, spilling rivers of light into the void. The shadow within pressed harder. The circle tore wider, and Samuel felt the truth. He was not being pulled into the void. The void was being pulled through him. The light burst outward. It rolled across the valley like a wave, searing the trees into ash. The ground groaned, spitting wider as molten cracks bled through the earth. The first of the forgotten emerged. Its form was not fixed. It shifted and wreathed, a body of shadows coiled with fire, eyes blooming across its surface like stars in a black sky. Its presence crushed the air. Every breath became pain. The skeletal figures did not rise. They dissolved into dust, their purpose complete. Their final cries lingered in the storm, faint echoes trembling through the collapsing sky. Samuel was gone. Where he stood was only a hollow silhouette burned into the soil, glowing faintly as if scorched by lightning. Yet his voice, fragmented, broken, still whispered in the air. "Help me." The forgotten creature turned. Its eyes blinked in unison, each one narrowing toward the horizon. The void above pulsed again. More shapes pressed against its surface, eager, restless, clawing to escape. The storm roared louder. Rain fell in burning drops, hissing as they struck the ground. The smell of sulphur thickened, mixing with iron smoke and the raw stench of decay. The earth itself seemed to bend beneath the weight of what was crossing over. Hills bowed. Rivers vanished into steaming fissures. The sky peeled back further, black flames spilling down like curtains. And then, a second limb tore through. It struck the ground with a force that shattered stone. The valley shook violently, trees toppling in waves, the air filled with a deafening crack that never seemed to end. The creature raised its head. From deep within its shifting mass came a sound. Not a roar, not a voice, a chorus. Countless whispers speaking at once. They filled the air, each word in a language older than time, twisting into the minds of anything that still listened. The message was clear. This was not an arrival. It was a return. The light surged from Samuel's mark. It spread in jagged lines across the soil, glowing veins pushing back against the dark fire. The cracks widened, humming with an energy that felt alive. The valley trembled beneath the clash of shadow and light. The forgotten creature writhed. Its form shuddered, its countless eyes narrowing, blinking faster, confused, unsettled. The whispers of the chorus fractured, some grew louder, others fell silent as if silenced by force. The storm hesitated. Rain froze midair, each drop hanging in place, glowing faintly in the blinding radiance. The air itself split with the sound of tearing cloth. Two powers collided, straining for dominance. From the soil, Samuel's voice erupted again. No longer a whisper, a cry. "I am not the gate. I am the lock." The ground split open around the silhouette. Columns of white fire erupted skyward, twisting and writhing like serpents. They wrapped around the limbs of the forgotten, searing through its flesh of shadow. Its scream was not a sound but a quake, rattling through bone earth and sky. The void above convulsed. The shapes pressing through faltered, clawing against the barrier as if dragged backward. The circle of darkness trembled, shrinking against the force of the light. The creature thrashed violently. Its massive limbs struck the earth, shattering mountains in the distance, cracking the valley floor wide open. The smell of ozone and ash filled the air, thick and choking, mixing with the bitter sting of burning stone. Still, the light burned brighter. The silhouette pulsed, Samuel's broken form glowing like a beacon. His voice rose again, strained, fractured, but unyielding. "You will not return." The creature reeled back. Its eyes closed all at once, vanishing into the storm. The chorus shattered into 1,000 screams. The void above flickered violently, collapsing inward like a wound forced shut. But just before it closed, one eye opened again, and it stared directly at Samuel's mark. A voice deeper than all the others cut through the storm. "This is not the end." The void sealed with a final violent crack. The storm collapsed inward, vanishing into silence. Rain froze, then fell all at once, drenching the scorched valley in steaming sheets. The air reeked of sulphur, ash, and something older, something that did not belong to this world. The creature was gone. The skeletal figures were gone, yet the earth still pulsed faintly beneath Samuel's mark, like a heartbeat buried deep within stone. The white fire dimmed. The glowing cracks closed slowly, hissing as if resisting. The valley grew dark again, the only light coming from that burned silhouette etched into the ground. Samuel's voice whispered once more, weaker now, almost gone. "They are not finished. I held them back. But the lock will not hold forever." The soil trembled beneath his words. A low groan rolled through the earth, distant yet rising, like something vast shifting beneath the crust. The trees that remained upright creaked, their bark splitting with fine cracks glowing faintly red. The silence was not relief, it was waiting. Above, the clouds parted. The night sky revealed itself, but wrong. The stars burned in strange positions, twisted constellations that did not belong. They blinked, flickered, and shifted as though alive. The mark of Samuel glowed again. A single thread of light rose from it, drifting upward into the alien sky. The stars pulsed in answer, one by one, as though they were watching. The air grew colder. The smell of iron filled the valley, sharp and metallic. The ground gave another groan, louder this time, and from deep below, a faint echoing knock resounded, rhythmic and deliberate, as if something was knocking to be let out. The knock came again, slow, measured. 3 strikes that shook the soil, rattling the broken trees like brittle bones. The stars pulsed brighter overhead. Each one flared in rhythm with the sound, as if answering a signal. The sky itself seemed alive, constellations bending, shifting, rearranging into shapes too vast for the mind to hold. Samuel's silhouette glowed faintly. His voice was barely more than a breath. "They are calling to each other across the sky and through the earth." The ground trembled. Cracks split open again, glowing red instead of white this time. The smell of sulphur returned thicker, suffocating. Steam hissed upward in sharp bursts, carrying the taste of ash on the wind. The valley was no longer silent. It breathed. Each pulse of the soil came with a deep exhale, warm air rising from the fissures, heavy with the scent of rot. The earth felt alive and restless. A sound rose from below, not the chorus, something deeper, a grinding, metallic groan, as if chains buried for centuries were straining against their anchors. The stars shifted once more. They bent inward, forming a spiral above the valley. At its centre, a single star pulsed, red and swollen like an open one. The knocking grew louder. 4 strikes this time, each one heavier, closer, as though something vast had nearly reached the surface. Samuel's voice broke into a scream.
"Do not let it answer!"
"If the lock breaks." His words cut short. The glowing silhouette flickered violently, pieces of light tearing away into the air like ash carried by wind. The cracks around it spread, glowing brighter, bleeding heat. The valley shook with a final knock, louder than all the rest, the sound of something answering from above. The knock came again, slow, measured. 3 strikes that shook the soil, rattling the broken trees like brittle bones. The stars pulsed brighter overhead. Each one flared in rhythm with the sound, as if answering a signal. The sky itself seemed alive, constellations bending, shifting, rearranging into shapes too vast for the mind to hold. Samuel's silhouette glowed faintly. His voice was barely more than a breath. "They are calling to each other across the sky and through the earth." The ground trembled. Cracks split open again, glowing red instead of white this time. The smell of sulphur returned, thicker, suffocating. Steam hissed upward in sharp bursts, carrying the taste of ash on the wind. The valley was no longer silent. It breathed. Each pulse of the soil came with a deep exhale, warm air rising from the fissures, heavy with the scent of rot. The earth felt alive and restless. A sound rose from below, not the chorus. Something deeper, a grinding metallic groan, as if chains buried for centuries were straining against their anchors. The stars shifted once more. They bent inward, forming a spiral above the valley. At its centre, a single star pulsed, red and swollen like an open wound. The knocking grew louder. 4 strikes this time, each one heavier, closer, as though something vast had nearly reached the surface. Samuel's voice broke into a scream.
"Do not let it answer!"
"If the lock breaks." His words cut short. The glowing silhouette flickered violently, pieces of light tearing away into the air like ash carried by wind. The cracks around it spread, glowing brighter, bleeding heat. The valley shook with a final knock, louder than all the rest. The sound of something answering from above. The knock came again, slow, measured. 3 strikes that shook the soil, rattling the broken trees like brittle bones. The stars pulsed brighter overhead. Each one flared in rhythm with the sound, as if answering a signal. The sky itself seemed alive, constellations bending, shifting, rearranging into shapes too vast for the mind to hold. Samuel's silhouette glowed faintly. His voice was barely more than a breath. They are calling to each other across the sky and through the earth. The ground trembled. Cracks split open again, glowing red instead of white this time. The smell of sulphur returned, thicker, suffocating. Steam hissed upward in sharp bursts, carrying the taste of ash on the wind. The valley was no longer silent. It breathed. Each pulse of the soil came with a deep exhale, warm air rising from the fissures, heavy with the scent of rot. The earth felt alive and restless. A sound rose from below, not the chorus, something deeper, a grinding, metallic groan, as if chains buried for centuries were straining against their anchors. The stars shifted once more. They bent inward, forming a spiral above the valley. At its centre, a single star pulsed, red and swollen like an open wound. The knocking grew louder. 4 strikes this time, each one heavier, closer, as though something vast had nearly reached the surface. Samuel's voice broke into a scream.
Do not let it answer!
If the lock breaks. His words cut short. The glowing silhouette flickered violently, pieces of light tearing away into the air like ash carried by wind. The cracks around it spread, glowing brighter, bleeding heat. The valley shook with a final knock, louder than all the rest. The sound of something answering from above. The red star pulsed. Its light spilled downward in jagged beams, piercing the valley like spears of fire. Each strike scorched the ground, leaving trails of smoke and molten stone. The soil answered. The cracks widened, glowing brighter, splitting apart with a sound like bones snapping under immense weight. Heat surged upward, suffocating, carrying the bitter stench of metal and blood. The spiral of stars above turned faster. They spun like a vast wheel grinding against the heavens. The sky groaned with their movement, a deep, resonant hum that pressed into the chest like a second heartbeat. From the mark where Samuel's silhouette burned, light flared once more. His voice returned, ragged, fraying at the edges. They are aligning, the above and the below. The key was never me alone. The knocking began again. Not slow now, rapid, relentless. Each strike shook the valley, sending shards of rock tumbling, trees collapsing into fire, rivers bursting into steam. The white fire that once held the void at bay flickered weakly. It was retreating, swallowed by the spreading red glow. The lock was failing. Then, the ground split wide open. From the fissure rose a hand. It was vast, charred, and bound in chains that glowed with ancient runes. Each finger dug into the soil, carving trenches as deep as rivers. The air froze. The sky held its breath. The stars pulsed in unison, every one beating to the rhythm of that single chained hand clawing upward. Samuel's light flickered wildly, his voice breaking through in a final cry. If it climbs free, there will be no sky left to hold the stars. The red star above blazed brighter, and from deep below the chains groaned again. The chained hand strained higher, its blackened skin cracked, glowing with fire that leaked like molten veins. Each movement sent shockwaves through the valley, splitting stone, toppling what little remained of the forest. The runes etched into its chains burned bright. They pulsed in rhythm with the spiral of stars above, as though the sky itself fed power into the bindings, and yet the chains trembled, stretched, groaned as if one link more would snap. The red star flared again. Its light struck the hand directly, searing into the runes. Smoke rose from the chains, filling the air with a choking stench of scorched metal. The sound was unbearable, an endless shriek of tortured iron. Samuel's silhouette convulsed. His voice surged louder, clearer, carried on the rising wind. The chains were meant to hold it forever, but the stars are undoing them. They are not watching, they are unlocking. The hand slammed back into the earth. The impact threw up waves of molten rock, raining down as burning fragments that hissed as they struck the ground. Each fragment glowed with the same symbols carved into the chains. Symbols that pulsed alive, crawling across the earth like fire-born serpents. The spiral in the heavens turned faster. The constellations bled, lines of red light connecting star to star until the sky became a burning lattice. At its centre, the red star swelled, throbbing like an open wound in the firmament. The valley no longer felt like part of the world. The air shimmered. The soil shifted, sliding inward as though dragged towards something vast beneath. The sound of grinding stone rose louder, a mountain-sized heart beating against its prison. Samuel screamed again, his words splitting with static. If it rises, the lock will never close again. The ground shook. A second hand broke free. Its fingers clawed upward, wrapped in the same burning chains. The earth groaned beneath its grip, and then the sky itself cracked. The sky split like shattered glass. Crimson light poured through the fractures, staining the world in a blood-red glow. Each crack spread wider, zigzagging across the heavens, exposing a void far darker than night. The spiral of stars convulsed. Their glow flickered, then bled downward in rivers of fire. The constellations themselves unraveled, collapsing into streams of molten light that poured into the valley. The sound was deafening, a roar like the collapse of mountains and oceans combined. The chained hands clawed higher. Fingers scraped the fractured sky, gouging streaks of shadow into the bleeding light. The chains rattled, sparks bursting from every strained link. Each spark fell as burning embers, hissing as they struck the ground and seared into the soil. Samuel's silhouette pulsed violently, his form breaking into shards of light. His voice cracked through the chaos, desperate roar. The sky is not breaking above, it is breaking through. It was never the heavens, it was the lid of the prison. The second hand struck the valley floor. The impact shattered the glowing fissures wide open, revealing a depthless pit beneath. From it rose a breath, hot, wet, reeking of iron and rot as if exhaled from lungs buried since the first age of the world. The earth trembled harder. Mountains in the distance crumbled, their peaks shearing away into the air. The rivers boiled into vapour, clouds of steam swirling upward to feed the spiralling vortex. The red star at the centre of the lattice swelled. It pulsed once, then split into a ring of fire. The ring spun faster, aligning perfectly with the chained creature below. The sound of the chains faltering filled the air, louder than thunder, sharper than screams. The silhouette of Samuel flickered again. This time, not as a man, but as a key, twisting, burning, reshaping in the soil. His last words tore through the storm, carried on the wind. If it rises whole, the world becomes its breath. And then the chains snapped. The sound of the chains breaking split the air like a scream. Metal shrieked, snapping one link at a time, each rupture echoing across the valley like cannon fire. The earth quaked violently, heaving as though something vast and ancient was forcing its way free. The hands tore upward. Their charred skin peeled, revealing sinews of shadow threaded with rivers of molten light. The claws dug into the soil, pulling with a strength that bent the land inward, collapsing hills into the widening pit. The valley roared like a living thing. The fissures bled with fire, spilling rivers of molten stone that hissed and spat as they surged downhill. The air thickened, hot and choking, every breath laced with ash and iron. Above, the broken sky writhed. The crimson ring spun faster, casting beams of scarlet fire across the world. Each beam struck distant mountains, seas, forests, igniting them in silence, as if reality itself was unravelling in those places. Then the head began to rise. It was enormous, featureless at first, a mass of shifting shadow and flame. But slowly, shapes emerged, eyes, hundreds, thousands, blinking open one by one, each reflecting a different sky, a different world. The chorus returned, not from the sky, not from the earth, but from within every mind that still breathed. The words layered endlessly, a tide of whispers flooding thought, drowning out self. You are inside the breath, and the breath is ours. Samuel's mark blazed suddenly, a final defiance. Light burst upwards, striking the rising head like a spear. The creature reeled, its endless eyes snapping shut for an instant. Samuel's voice ripped through the storm, raw and fractured. I cannot hold it, but you must remember, this was not the first time. The earth buckled. The creature surged higher, and for the first time, its mouth split open. What poured out was not sound. It was silence so heavy it crushed the air, bending the world into stillness. The silence spread like a flood. It pressed into the lungs heavy, suffocating. The storm stilled. The fire froze mid-flicker. Even the cracking earth halted as though time itself had been swallowed. The creature's mouth gaped wider. From its void poured not breath, but absence. An emptiness that stripped colour from the world. The valley dimmed to shades of grey, the molten rivers cooling instantly into lifeless stone. Every eye on its face opened again. They did not blink now. They stared outward, unblinking, vast and eternal. Each gaze was a weight, a hand pressing against the soul. The chorus returned, yet no sound stirred. The words appeared inside every thought, etched like burning runes across the mind. We were bound. We were forgotten. But the lock breaks again and again. Samuel's light flared desperately. His silhouette fractured, shards of brilliance scattering like glass across the ground. He screamed into the silence, his voice the only sound that still existed.
Do not let it draw breath.
If it inhales, the world will collapse inward. The creature's chest began to rise, slow, inevitable. The silence deepened, pulling harder, dragging the very air from the valley into its endless lungs. Mountains far beyond the horizon crumbled inward, their dust streaming toward the pit. Oceans split, waves climbing into the sky as they were pulled from their beds. The stars above twisted tighter into the spiral, their light stretching downward like strands of a vast net. The world itself seemed to lean, as though gravity had shifted toward the creature's breath. Samuel's mark blazed brighter than ever before. A pillar of white fire erupted upward, colliding with the spiral of stars. For an instant, the silence cracked. A single sound broke through, the shatter of something ancient, breaking open. And then the creature's inhale deepened. ChatGPT said the inhale tore at the world. Air screamed into the abyss of its lungs, bending trees flat, stripping the valley bare. Stones splintered upward. Entire ridges ripped from the earth and swallowed whole. The rivers reversed. Waters rose into the air like serpents of liquid, twisting toward the creature's maw. Fish, soil, fragments of bone, all torn from the ground and dragged into the silence. The stars themselves bent lower. Their light stretched into streams, bending like molten glass, feeding the spiral. The sky dimmed until only the red ring above remained, pulsing with each pull of the creature's breath. Samuel's fire strained against it. The pillar cracked, its light flickering, collapsing inward under the crushing force. His voice fractured, distant as though breaking apart in a gale. It is pulling me with it, pulling everything. If the breath is finished, nothing will remain. The ground around his mark collapsed. The silhouette sank, dragged toward the abyss like all else. His light stuttered, flaring weakly, refusing to die. The creature's chest expanded further. Its form towered higher, a horizon of shadow and fire blotting out what little remained of the sky. Every eye across its face turned downward, unblinking, hungering. The silence deepened until thought itself wavered. It was not the absence of sound now, but the erasure of meaning, of memory. A void reaching not just into the world, but into the mind. And then the inhale stopped. The creature held its breath. The valley trembled in the pause. The stars froze in place. The world seemed to hang, caught between collapse and annihilation. Samuel's broken voice cut through, weak but sharp. It is about to exhale. The valley held its breath with the monster. Time itself quivered, stretched thin, waiting for the release. The creature's chest swelled, glowing from within, a red furnace, coals smouldering beneath its ribs, its skin cracked, leaking threads of fire into the night. The silence thickened. Even the wind seemed locked in place, waiting for the unthinkable. The world bent, trembling on the cusp of destruction. Samuel's light sputtered but did not fade. His fractured form pushed against the pull, straining, shaking. He carved the air with desperate fire, forming runes that blurred sparks. The creature leaned forward. 100 eyes glistened, their glow shifting from hunger to purpose. It did not merely look at the valley, it measured it, judged it. The first tremor came like a heartbeat. The ground pulsed, sending shockwaves through the stone. The mark beneath Samuel cracked, spilling white flame into the soil. His voice barely a whisper now. If it exhales, this world will be hollowed out. The creature opened its mouth. The abyss within glowed red, endless and alive. Heat rolled across the valley, blistering the earth, searing the air. The pause ended. The exhale began. It was not air that came forth. It was something older, heavier, a wave of annihilation that tore at the core of things. Stone turned to dust. The rivers boiled away. The stars dimmed, and through it all Samuel screamed a single word, one that split the silence like glass. A name, lost, forbidden, yet alive. The exhale faltered. The creature froze. The world held on the edge of collapse. The name echoed through the valley. Sharp, ancient, unforgiving. It tore through the night like shattered glass. The ground buckled. The sky rippled as if struck by an unseen hand. The monster staggered. Its 1,000 eyes flickered, dimmed, then burned brighter, as though wrestling with itself. The exhale shuddered to a halt, flames clawing at its throat. Samuel's body bent under the strain. His veins glowed with white fire. His shadow stretched unnaturally long, curling into shapes not his own. The name lingered in the air. It pulsed like a wound, a sound not meant for human tongues. The creature recoiled. Its scream was not rage. It was recognition. It knew that name. It feared it, and yet it obeyed it. The valley quaked. The stones themselves vibrated with the resonance of that forbidden syllable. The mark beneath Samuel's feet flared, splitting wide, spilling light that looked alive. A figure began to rise from the fissure. Not flesh, not shadow. Something older than both. The monster knelt, its great body trembling, its furnace chest dimming, every eye lowered to the ground. Samuel gasped, falling to his knees. His voice broke, but he forced the word again, bleeding, shaking. The fissure widened. The light took form. A hand emerged, vast, pale, clawed, and the air itself bent around it. Something else was coming through, and the monster was only its herald. The hand pressed against the broken earth. Its skin shimmered like stone and metal fused together. Each claw scraped sparks as it dragged across the fissure's edge. The ground groaned beneath its weight. Pebbles rattled. Air grew heavy, thick, almost too dense to breathe. Samuel's chest heaved. His breath came in shallow bursts. The taste of iron filled his mouth. Above him, the monster trembled. It bowed lower, eyes dimming, their glow reduced to a faint ember. Its enormous frame quivered like a servant before its master. The light grew, not warm, cold, piercing, like winter locked in crystal. Another limb pushed through. twisted, elongated. Its surface pulsed faintly, like veins beneath translucent marble. Samuel's vision blurred. He wiped at his eyes, but the brilliance stung deeper. Every nerve in his body screamed to run. Then a sound deeper than thunder rolled from the fissure. Not a voice, something beneath a voice. It slid into Samuel's bones. It rattled his teeth. It told him this was not the beginning. This was the return. The figure pulled higher, shoulders breaking the surface. Its shape towered, unfinished, half-formed yet already immense. The smell of ozone filled the valley, sharp and biting, mingled with burning pine. Samuel staggered back. His knees buckled. He clutched the soil as the world around him warped. Time seemed slower. Shadows bent the wrong way. The stars above flickered, then vanished one by one. The being was consuming the sky, and still it rose. The figure dragged itself higher from the fissure. Its torso gleamed, carved with shifting symbols that read like living script. The marks glowed faintly, each pulse sending a vibration through the earth. Samuel pressed his palms to the soil. It was hot, too hot. Steam rose where his skin touched it. Above, the air cracked like glass under strain. The stars were gone now. Only blackness stretched overhead, vast and endless. The monster kept its head bowed. Its many eyes refused to rise. Its body shook, not with rage, but with fear. Samuel forced himself upright. His legs trembled. His heartbeat pounded like drums in his ears. The being lifted its face. If it was a face at all, smooth, featureless, yet Samuel felt it staring directly into him. The sound came again, that low, thunderous resonance, but this time it carried meaning, not words, not language. Samuel's body jerked. His vision fractured, splitting into shards of light and shadow. His mouth opened without his will. A different voice poured from his throat, cold, hollow, unfamiliar. "I am the vessel," he heard himself say. "I am the door." The fissure widened further. The ground cracked outward, racing toward the tree line. Pines toppled like brittle toys, their roots screaming as they tore free. From the abyss, the being's full chest rose. It was enormous. Its very presence bent the valley, warping distance, folding sound. Samuel felt the weight of it press into his bones. The smell of scorched earth filled his lungs. His vision swam with white fire. And still, the voice inside him continued. Words not his own. Words summoning something greater. Something that had waited far longer than he could comprehend. The voice dragged Samuel forward. His feet moved without command, stepping closer to the fissure. The earth burned beneath him, yet he felt nothing. The being leaned higher. Its towering frame blocked what remained of the night sky. Every movement bent the air, thickening it like glass about to shatter. Samuel's lips cracked as more words spilled out. Ancient syllables scraped his throat raw. The sound was jagged, sharp, like metal tearing against stone. The valley answered. Rock split, roots red from the soil. The river nearby turned black, its surface rippling with oily sheen. The monster bowed lower, its vast body pressed flat to the ground as though hiding, not from Samuel, but from what Samuel was becoming. A cold wind rushed down. It carried a smell like burnt copper and wet ash. The taste of it clung to Samuel's tongue, bitter and suffocating. The fissure flared wide. Now the being's full frame stood revealed, too vast, too shifting to hold in a single thought. Its body stretched upward, yet downward at the same time, filling every space. Samuel's knees buckled. The fire in his veins burned brighter, spilling light from his skin. The voice in him grew louder, deeper, no longer hollow but absolute. "I call the forgotten." It roared through him. I open what was sealed. The ground split again. A second fissure cracked open, smaller, jagged, glowing. From within, more hands began to claw upward. Their glow bled across the valley, staining the trees with a sickly light. The ground rumbled in steady rhythm, like a heart beating beneath the soil. From each crack, hands emerged, not all alike. Some skeletal, thin as brittle twigs, others massive, plated with stone and glistening veins of fire. They clawed at the earth, dragged themselves upward. Each movement screeched like rusted metal grinding. Samuel's body arched back, his eyes blazed white. His voice rose in chants that shook the night air. The monster whimpered, its vast eyes squeezed shut. It pressed its enormous body deeper into the dirt, trembling like prey before a predator. The first figure pulled free. A crooked shape, hunched and twisted, with skin that rippled like tar. Its face had no mouth. Yet Samuel heard it scream. The second followed, tall, thin. Its limbs stretched too far, bending at wrong angles. Its fingers raked the air as if tearing at invisible fabric. Samuel's veins glowed hotter. He could smell himself burning. His skin crackled, blistering under the fire that poured from within. The colossal being above the fissure lowered its featureless head. It regarded the rising forms, silent judging. The sky tore open, not clouds, not storm, a fracture of pure black, jagged and endless. Through it, whispers seeped. They slid into Samuel's ears, cold and heavy, pulling at his thoughts like hooks in flesh. He tried to scream, but the voice inside him only grew stronger. It was no longer a vessel. It was a command, a summoning, and the valley was no longer the world he knew. It was becoming the doorway. Samuel's body convulsed. His bones cracked like splitting branches. Light poured from the fractures in his skin, spilling across the ground in jagged streams. The whispers thickened. They pressed against his skull, drilling deeper. Each voice clawed for space inside his mind. The valley revved. Grass shriveled to ash. The trees bent backward, their trunks splintering as though pulled toward the sky's fracture. The smaller beings dragged themselves fully free. Their shapes twitched, incomplete, shifting as if unfinished. Each step they took left the ground smouldering. The colossal figure loomed above them all, its faceless head tilted towards Samuel. Though it had no eyes, he felt its gaze pierce through every layer of him. The chant forced itself from his mouth again. The sound rattled the earth, low and resonant, a language too vast for mortal lungs. Blood streaked down his chin, hot and metallic on his lips. The fissure widened further. The air tore with it. The black fracture in the sky spread until the stars themselves seemed devoured. From beyond, a deeper shadow shifted. Massive, unfathomable. Its movement alone sent waves of cold air spiraling downward, freezing the river solid in seconds. Samuel's body could no longer hold. His skin blistered, tearing under the light that surged from within. Every nerve screamed, yet his voice did not stop. The ground heaved upward, throwing stone and soil high into the air. The beings that had crawled free shrieked in unison. Their cries echoed the whispers, a chorus of impossible sound. And then, the fracture above split wide, gaping like a wound in reality. From its edge, something vast began to emerge, not hand, not face. A presence so heavy it made the valley collapse inward. Samuel's heart faltered. The voice inside him roared its final command. The doorway was open. The fracture pulsed like a living wound. Each beat sent waves of pressure crashing across the valley. Samuel's ears rang until blood trickled down his neck. The ground split wider beneath him. Stone shattered. Roots tore apart with cries like breaking bones. The beings already risen knelt low. Their misshapen bodies pressed flat against the scorched earth. They shuddered, as if waiting for permission to breathe. From the fracture, light spilled, not golden, not wholly a bruised, violet radiance that smelled of iron and rot. Samuel's body lifted from the ground. His arms stretched wide, pulled by invisible hooks. His back arched until it felt ready to snap. The voice inside him surged. It screamed through his lungs, tearing his throat raw. The words bent the air, each syllable vibrating in his bones. Shadows lengthened unnaturally. They crept upward across the valley walls, climbing like liquid against gravity. The sky itself flickered, as if another world pressed against it. Then, a shape began to emerge from the fracture. Not whole, not clear, only fragments revealed, shifting too quickly to hold form. A single limb slipped through. It was vast, yet delicate, covered in countless eyes that blinked open in perfect unison. Their glow pierced Samuel's skull, filling his mind with images of places he could not understand. The smell thickened, burnt ozone, rotting earth. Something older than death itself. The colossal figure in the fissure bowed lower. Its faceless head touched the ground. Even it submitted to what was arriving. Samuel's vision blurred white. His heartbeat slowed, then raced, then stopped, then began again in a rhythm not his own. The voices in his head fused into one. It was not command, it was greeting. The entity beyond the fracture was stepping through. The limbs stretched further into the world. Its many eyes blinked in a rhythm that made the ground tremble. Each blink sent waves of cold rushing across Samuel's skin, raising every hair. The fracture widened with a groan like tearing metal. Pieces of the sky seemed to fall away, shattering into sparks before vanishing. The stars did not return. Another limb emerged. This one coiled, segmented, dripping with a substance that hissed when it struck the frozen river. The smell was unbearable, sulphur mixed with rotting leaves, sharp enough to burn Samuel's throat. He tried to close his eyes. He could not. The light from the entity forced them open, holding him captive to its form. The beings on the ground writhed. Their bodies bent and twisted, reshaping under the weight of its gaze. Their bones cracked outward, sprouting new limbs, new mouths, as if remade in its image. The colossal faceless figure still knelt. Its silence was louder than the chaos around it, as though it too waited for what was to come. Samuel's chest split with pain. Light poured from the cracks in his ribs, each pulse synchronized with the entity's movement. His heartbeat no longer belonged to him. Then, the shadow beyond the fracture shifted. A vast outline pressed against the edges impossible to measure. The air grew heavy enough to crush stone. The voices returned, fused into one great resonance. They filled the valley, the sky, his skull. Every word was a promise of ending. Samuel's body jerked violently. His voice roared, though it was no longer his own. I welcome the first. I open for the rest. The fracture split to its widest point. The world itself seemed to bend inward, pulled like fabric toward the tearing sky. Something far larger was about to step through. The fracture screamed as it tore wider, a sound like 1,000 voices breaking at once. The valley shook so violently that stone split like brittle glass. Samuel's body hovered above the fissure. His arms stretched unnaturally long. His skin burned with white fire that cracked and peeled. The air thickened to the weight of water. Every breath clawed his throat. Each inhale tasted of sulfur and rust. From the fracture, the vast shape pressed closer. Its limbs wreathed with impossible geometry, folding in ways his mind could not follow. Every glimpse made his stomach lurch as if gravity itself had twisted. The beings on the ground convulsed. Their flesh rippled. Their screams turned to low humming, each voice blending into a single tone. It was worship. The faceless colossus bowed even lower. Its massive frame trembled. The earth beneath it cracked from the pressure. Samuel's eyes flooded with light. He saw places that were not his world. Oceans without end. Skies full of black suns. Cities of bone burning with eternal flame. The fracture pulsed. The sky bent inward, collapsing like torn fabric pulled through a hole. Wind shrieked in all directions, carrying dust, stone, and trees into the void. Then it happened. The entity began to step through. Its form pressed into reality, warping everything it touched. The air screamed as it entered. Colour itself fled away. The world turned grey, then darker still, until only the violet glow remained. Samuel's heart stopped, yet he still moved. The voice inside him thundered. The first has returned. The ground caved, sinking deep into the fissure. The valley was no longer a valley. It was becoming something else. Something built to hold what had crossed over. The fracture screamed as it tore wider, a sound like 1,000 voices breaking at once. The valley shook so violently that stone split like brittle glass. Samuel's body hovered above the fissure. His arms stretched unnaturally long. His skin burned with white fire that cracked and peeled. The air thickened to the weight of water. Every breath clawed his throat. Each inhale tasted of sulphur and rust. From the fracture, the vast shape pressed closer. Its limbs wreathed with impossible geometry, folding in ways his mind could not follow. Every glimpse made his stomach lurch as if gravity itself had twisted. The beings on the ground convulsed. Their flesh rippled. Their screams turned to low humming, each voice blending into a single tone. It was worship. The faceless colossus bowed even lower. Its massive frame trembled. The earth beneath it cracked from the pressure. Samuel's eyes flooded with light. He saw places that were not his world. Oceans without end, skies full of black suns, cities of bone burning with eternal flame. The fracture pulsed, the sky bent inward, collapsing like torn fabric pulled through a hole. Wind shrieked in all directions, carrying dust, stone, and trees into the void. Then it happened. The entity began to step through. Its form pressed into reality, warping everything it touched. The air screamed as it entered. Colour itself bled away. The world turned grey, then darker still, until only the violet glow remained. Samuel's heart stopped, yet he still moved. The voice inside him thundered. The first has returned. The ground caved, sinking deep into the fissure. The valley was no longer a valley. It was becoming something else. Something built to hold what had crossed over. The valley no longer felt like earth. It twisted, stretched, bent inward as though reality itself were folding. The entity's bulk spilled across the broken ground, its limbs digging trenches miles deep. Samuel's body shook violently. His skin peeled in burning sheets. Light surged from within, tearing through him like fire through paper. And yet, he did not fall. Invisible hands still held him high above the fissure, forcing his body open like a vessel carved for one purpose. His jaw locked. The voice within roared again. More. The fracture in the sky pulsed. A wave of sound burst outward, low and deafening, flattening what remained of the forest. Trees snapped. Stone splintered. Even the air seemed to crack. Behind the first entity, movement stirred. A darker shadow loomed within the black wound of the sky. It was larger still, vast enough to blot out everything. The smaller beings shrieked in ecstasy. Their voices merged into one endless wail, vibrating the earth. Their bodies tore themselves apart, reforming into shapes that better mirrored what was coming. Samuel's chest split open. His ribcage flared outward like broken wings. Light spilled into the sky, forming a beacon that stabbed deep into the fracture. The second presence stirred. Its weight pressed through the void. Even the first entity paused, limbs lowering, as if it too yielded before this greater force. Samuel's eyes rolled white, his veins pulsed with violet fire. The taste of ash filled his mouth, thick and bitter. The voice within him was no longer a roar. It was a chorus, hundreds, thousands, all speaking through his shattered body. The gate is open, and from beyond, the greater shadow leaned closer. Its breath alone bent the valley. Its presence alone threatened to erase the world. The greater shadow pressed against the fracture. The sky groaned as if it were a fragile shell straining to contain what clawed against it. Cracks of violet light streaked across the heavens, splitting night into shards. The first entity lowered itself further. Its many eyes dimmed, their glow fading to a submissive flicker. It crouched vast and trembling, like a servant before its master. Samuel's body convulsed. His chest heaved, ribs jutting like broken spears. Light surged from the wounds, each pulse burning the air into smoke. The ground twisted beneath him. Stone turned liquid. Earth folded inward, reshaping into spirals that led down, always down, into endless dark. Then the sound came. Not a roar, Not a voice. A low vibration older than words, older than thought itself. It rattled Samuel's teeth until they cracked. It tore through his skull, grinding into the marrow of his bones. Every nerve screamed, yet his body only echoed the sound, amplifying it. The smaller beings collapsed, writhing as if torn apart from within. Their bodies split, spilling viscous light that hissed across the ruined soil. They were offerings. Sacrifices made in silence. The fracture widened. From its edge a vast shape pressed through, not limb, not face, something far greater, coiling and unfolding with impossible scale. The air turned bitter, thick with a metallic taste that coated Samuel's tongue. His lungs filled with cold fire. Each breath felt like swallowing blades. His voice, cracked and raw, spoke again. This time it was not command, it was surrender. I open. I yield. I am nothing. The valley collapsed inward. The sky dimmed until violet was the only colour left, and from the wound above, the greater presence leaned closer. Its arrival had only begun. The violet light deepened, swallowing every trace of shadow. Time itself seemed to slow, each second stretching into an eternity of dread. The fracture tore wider. Edges curled outward like burning paper. A void seeped through, thick, suffocating, alive. Samuel's eyes rolled back. Only white remained, glowing faintly like dying embers. His body floated inches above the ruined ground, trembling against unseen strings. The sound grew heavier. A pulse. A rhythm. As if the universe itself beat like a heart. And it was quickening. The presence beyond the fracture leaned closer. Its form defied shape. It was not one being, but many. Not still, but constantly shifting. A storm of forms, folding and unfolding into themselves. Samuel's body twisted in response. Bones cracked in sharp staccato bursts. Flesh warped as if sculpted by invisible hands. His scream did not escape his throat. It was swallowed by the air itself. The earth broke open. Spirals widened into chasms, glowing with molten veins of violet fire. The valley was no longer a place, but an altar. The greater presence was entering, not with haste, not with mercy, but with certainty, inevitable, unstoppable. And in that silence between pulses, a whisper slid through Samuel's teeth. They will all see. The fracture blazed brighter than the sun. Every star above dimmed in answer. The true descent had begun. The light grew unbearable. Not white, not violet. Something deeper, something that pressed against the bones and bled into the mind. The valley shivered. Trees bent backward, their trunks splintering with sharp cracks. The air thickened, pressing down as if the sky itself had weight. Samuel's body convulsed. Skin stretched. Fingers clawed at nothing. Each breath rattled like broken glass inside his lungs. Above, the clouds tore apart, not scattered, not moved, ripped, as though an unseen claw had dragged itself through the heavens. The stars shifted, no longer where they should be. Constellations warped into new shapes, symbols not meant for human eyes. A sound drifted from the fracture, not a voice, not a scream, a chorus, low endless, like thousands chanting in unison, their words older than time itself. The ground trembled harder, stones split into veins of glowing light, heat rose from below, carrying with it the scent of sulphur, iron and ash. Samuel's mouth opened again, but the words were not his. They vibrated with the same chorus spilling from the void. They will not remember, they will not resist, they will kneel. And then the fracture pulsed. Once, twice. The world seemed to blink, shadows crawled where no light should cast them. Figures stood at the edge of the valley, tall, silent, watching not men, not human, but something wearing the outline of both. The first heralds had arrived. The figures did not move, yet their presence bent the air. Each outline shimmered as if their forms could not hold still. Cold spread through the valley, not wind, not weather. A hollow cold sinking beneath the skin, into the marrow itself. Samuel's eyes locked on them. No fear, no hesitation, only recognition. He dropped to his knees, hands trembling against the fractured earth. The chorus from the sky grew louder. The same words echoed from his mouth. They are here. The first to walk, the first to claim. The ground split wider. Chunks of stone tumbled into a void that should not exist. Heat poured upward. Sulphur burned the lungs. Ash coated the tongue. The figures stepped forward, slow, measured. Every stride sinking deeper into the soil as though the earth itself recoiled. One raised its hand long, too long. Shadows peeled from its fingers and stretched across the valley floor. The moment the shadow touched Samuel, his body arched back violently. His scream tore through the storm, half human, half something else. Skin cracked with veins of pale fire. His face twisted, mouth opening wider than bone should allow. The chanting stopped. The valley fell silent. And then a single voice spoke, low, resonant, not from the figure, not from Samuel, but from everywhere. Let the veil be undone. The sky split again, wider, hungrier, and something vast began to move behind it. The fracture above widened, light blazed through, but it was not sunlight. It pulsed like a living heart, red, then violet, then a colour the mind could not hold. The air thickened. Each breath felt heavy, like swallowing ash and iron. The valley trembled. Trees splintered, roots tearing free as if fleeing from the soil itself. From the rift, shapes stirred, not solid, not mist, something between. Tendrils of liquid shadow slipped downward, revving with purpose. The figures below raised their arms in unison. Their outlines flickered, breaking like static. The tendrils touched them, and the valley filled with a piercing, metallic shriek. Samuel's body convulsed. His skin glowed with burning cracks, lines racing across his arms and face. His eyes rolled white. His voice joined the shriek, carrying words that twisted the ears, words not meant for this earth. The ground split further, releasing a sore stench, rotten sulphur, mixed with something sweet and sickly, like decayed flowers. The scent clung to the tongue thick, unbearable. The tendrils reached lower, closer. They brushed the fractured earth, and wherever they touched, the ground hissed, melting into black sludge. The storm above spiraled tighter. A vortex formed at the centre of the rift. Something vast pressed against the thin veil of reality. Its outline hinted at wings, not feathered, but jagged, serrated, endless. The voice returned, calm, unstoppable. It begins. And with those words the valley went dark. The darkness was complete, not night, not shadow. A deeper black, thick as tar, swallowing every trace of light. The storm's roar faded. So did the forest. No rustle of leaves, no wind, no sound at all. Only breath, not his, not human. Heavy, slow, like stone grinding against stone. Samuel's body lifted from the ground. His limbs hung limp, but his chest glowed faintly, pulsing with unnatural light. Each pulse echoed through the valley like a distant drum. The figures remained still, silent, waiting. Then, from within the black eyes opened, not two, not four, but a ring of countless orbs stretching outward into the void. Each eye glimmered with shifting colours. Each eye locked onto the earth. The air shivered. Skin prickled. Every hair stood upright as if the body itself sensed what the mind could not understand. A low hum began to vibrate through the soil. Stones rattled. Bones ached. The hum grew sharper, twisting into a piercing frequency. Too high for comfort, too deep for escape. Samuel's mouth opened wide. A voice poured out, not his, not alone. A chorus, layered and endless. Speaking in tongues that clawed at the ears, the words made the trees bow, made the ground crack, made the sky recoil. And then, the first tendril of the thing above slid fully into the valley. It was not flesh, it was not smoke, it was something else. Wet to the eye, dry to the touch, freezing to the soul, it coiled around Samuel. His glow flared, and for the first time he screamed like a man again. But the scream did not last. The tendril pulled tighter, and the valley shook as if the earth itself had joined in his agony. The darkness was complete. Not night, not shadow. A deeper black, thick as tar, swallowing every trace of light. The storm's roar faded. So did the forest. No rustle of leaves, no wind, no sound at all.
Only breath, not his, not human.
Heavy, slow like stone grinding against stone. Samuel's body lifted from the ground. His limbs hung limp, but his chest glowed faintly, pulsing with unnatural light. Each pulse echoed through the valley like a distant drum. The figures remained still, silent, waiting. Then, from within the black, eyes opened. Not two, not four, but a ring of countless orbs, stretching outward into the void. Each eye glimmered with shifting colours. Each eye locked onto the earth. The air shivered. Skin prickled. Every hair stood upright, as if the body itself sensed what the mind could not understand. A low hum began to vibrate through the soil. Stones rattled, bones ached. The hum grew sharper, twisting into a piercing frequency. Too high for comfort, too deep for escape, Samuel's mouth opened wide. A voice poured out, not his, not alone. A chorus, layered and endless, speaking in tongues that clawed at the ears. The words made the trees bow, made the ground crack, made the sky recoil. And then, the first tendril of the thing above slid fully into the valley. It was not flesh. It was not smoke. It was something else. Wet to the eye, dry to the touch, freezing to the soul, it coiled around Samuel. His glow flared, and for the first time he screamed like a man again. But the scream did not last. The tendril pulled tighter, and the valley shook as if the earth itself had joined in his agony. The valley quaked as the first step landed, not a foot, not a claw, something else. A structure of shifting matter, both solid and liquid, pressing into the soil. The earth screamed. Rocks split. Roots curled upward like writhing snakes. The ground seemed desperate to flee. The glow from Samuel's chest flared brighter, syncing with the rhythm of the colossal thing. Each pulse tore through the valley, shaking leaves from trees, splintering bark, and sending echoes into the hollow dark sky. The smell grew unbearable. A mix of burning copper, sour decay, and something sweet cloying. Like honey left too long in heat, it coated the throat. It poisoned every breath. The figures bowed deeper. Their flickering forms bent low, faces pressed into the scorched ground. They whispered in unison. Their voices trembled. Their words fractured into static, half heard, half felt. Return. Return. Above, the eyes swelled. Each one dilated, revealing endless tunnels spiraling inward. Looking into them was falling without end. Another limb pressed through. This one dripped with black ichor that steamed where it fell, burning holes into the valley floor. The hiss of the liquid was deafening, like acid poured onto stone. Samuel's body jerked upright. His jaw unhinged further, splitting skin, cracking bone. A light blazed from his throat so intense it seared the edges of sight. His scream tore through the valley again, but this time it was not pain. It was invocation. The rift widened once more. The air folded inward. The valley bent, edges warping, as though space itself was being pulled toward the thing. And then, a shadow vast enough to drown mountains pressed against the veil. It leaned closer, closer, closer still, until the boundary between worlds began to tear. The tear spread like splitting glass. Cracks of light and shadow ran across the sky, jagged and trembling. Each fracture groaned as though the heavens themselves resisted. The shadow pressed harder. Its weight bent the air, pressing down on the chest, crushing every breath. The soil beneath quivered, splitting into deep canyons that glowed with searing red veins. The figures no longer whispered, they screamed. Hands clawed at the earth bodies, contorting, as if devotion had turned to terror. Their outlines blurred, melting into streaks of static light. Samuel rose again, not standing, floating. The glow from within his chest now poured from his eyes, his mouth, the cracks splitting his skin. He was becoming hollow, becoming a vessel. The sound from above deepened, no longer a hum, now a steady pulse, a cosmic heartbeat. It throbbed in perfect unison with Samuel's body. Every pulse made the valley buckle. Every pulse pulled the rift wider. The smell shifted. Ash and sulphur gave way to something older. Wet stone, rotting seaweed. The stench of things buried deep beneath oceans that had never known light. From the widening rift, a single talon emerged. It was vast, jagged, obsidian in texture yet slick with glistening slime. When it touched the ground, the earth sizzled. The sound was like 1,000 insects screaming at once. Samuel's mouth opened. His voice cracked into 3, then 6, then countless layers. Every word he spoke twisted reality, bending the valley like a warped reflection. They come, they claim, they rise. Above, the shadow leaned closer still, its form pressed against the breaking veil. So immense the horizon itself bent inward. The stars beyond disappeared, swallowed whole, and as the talon drove deeper into the valley, splitting stone and soil, the rift gave way. One final crack, one final tear. The veil began to collapse. The veil shuddered as it split apart. Light burst through in violent streams, too bright to look at, too dark to escape. The sky convulsed, folding inward, as if torn fabric was being yanked from every direction at once. The talon carved deeper into the valley. Every inch it sank bowled the ground, filling the air with steam that stank of blood and iron. The figures closest to it dissolved instantly. Their bodies turned to ash mid-scream, their voices echoing long after their forms had vanished. Samuel remained untouched. He hovered, his body rigid, glowing veins spreading across his skin like cracks in porcelain. His eyes blazed with fire, his mouth moving faster than sound, whispering words too ancient for the human tongue. The pulsing heartbeat from above grew louder, so loud it blurred thought, so loud it shook the marrow of bone. Each throb felt like the earth itself was convulsing. Then, the veil ripped completely open. A gale of pressure slammed into the valley, throwing soil, trees, and shattered stone into the sky. The air bent and warped, tasting metallic, sparking against the tongue. Every breath burned like lightning in the lungs, and through the rift, a fragment of the thing stepped forward. Not a body, not a face, something in between. A shifting mass of wings serrated like blades, eyes layered upon eyes, mouths opening and closing across its surface. It blotted out the horizon. It was the horizon. The sound it made was not sound. It was a memory, pressed into the mind, a scream that was both inside and outside at once. The valley shook, the forest bowed. The stars above blinked out one by one. Samuel's voice rose with it. No longer human, no longer his. The return is sealed. And as the words echoed, the world itself seemed to bend toward the being, as though everything living was about to be pulled inside. The valley groaned under the weight of its presence. Every stone cracked, every root reddened. The soil itself bled black as the thing stretched further into this world. The air thickened, pressing against the skin like a living hand. Each breath clawed at the throat. Each heartbeat stuttered against the rhythm pounding from above. Those who had hidden in the woods now stumbled into view. Villagers, farmers, drawn by terror, yet unable to look away. Their eyes widened. Their bodies trembled one by one. They dropped to their knees, hands covering their ears. But the sound was not heard with ears. It lived inside them. The creature shifted, its eyes turned downward. 1,000 pupils dilated at once, glowing with cold fire. The light swept across the valley like a flood. Where it touched, trees withered, grass curled into ash, stone cracked and crumbled to dust. Samuel's glow flared brighter. The veins along his skin pulsed violently. His voice broke into a scream of triumph. Witness their undoing. A tendril extended from the mass above. It coiled through the air, moving like smoke, like liquid, like thought itself. It brushed against one of the villagers. He froze. His skin blistered. His mouth opened, but no scream came out. Instead, light poured from his eyes, his chest, his fingertips. In a heartbeat, he was gone. Nothing remained but a scorched imprint on the soil. The others wailed, but their voices twisted, warped, merging into the hum of the creature. It was feeding. not on flesh, but on something deeper. The rift widened again, trembling with hunger. The thing beyond pushed harder. The sky rippled, as if reality itself was a thin membrane about to burst. And then the stars above flickered once more, not fading, moving, rearranging into symbols that no human eye should have recognized. But Samuel whispered them flawlessly, his voice breaking as he spoke the final shape. The ground split open, the valley began to sink, the valley sank deeper, the earth crumbled in jagged sheets, sliding into the abyss. The sound was deafening, stone grinding, roots snapping, the groan of a world tearing itself apart. Villagers clung to trees, to each other, to the very soil, but nothing held. The ground shifted beneath their hands, turning soft, crumbling like wet sand. Their cries were swallowed by the endless hum that poured from the rift. The creature's tendrils reached wider. They brushed treetops, mountainsides, rooftops of far-off houses. Each touch drained colour from the world. Leaves blackened, stone paled to brittle white. The air itself dimmed, as though light was being bled away. Samuel hovered at the centre, glowing brighter than ever. His face no longer resembled a man. It was a mask of light, featureless, unblinking. Every pulse from his body sank deeper into the soil, guiding the collapse, pulling the valley further into the rift. The smell grew worse. Rotting brine, burning metal, and smoke so acrid it stripped the throat raw. Eyes watered, skin itched and cracked under the weight of it. Above, the stars finished their rearrangement. The sky was no longer a sky. It was a pattern, a vast sigil spanning the heavens, glowing with a pale, impossible light. The moment it sealed into place, the creature stirred. Its wings stretched fully, blotting out the horizon. Its eyes burned hotter, brighter, and then a second voice joined the first, higher, sharper, from within the earth. The villagers turned their heads as one. The canyon splitting the valley glowed, not red, not molten, but cold. Blue fire surged upward, tracing veins through the broken ground. The earth was not just collapsing, it was answering. The blue fire surged higher. It roared through the canyons, splitting stone with a sound like cracking bone. Cold mist poured from it, chilling the valley to its core. The air stank of ozone, sharp and metallic, burning the nose. Frost crept over scorched earth, hissing where it clashed with the black echo that dripped from above. The valley steamed with their war. The creature's tendrils recoiled, thrashing violently. Its wings trembled. Its thousand eyes blinked at once, narrowing against the rising glow from below. Samuel convulsed mid-air. His light sputtered, flickering like a lantern in wind. His screams shifted tone, no longer triumphant, but pained, ragged, torn from his hollow chest. From the chasms, shapes began to form. Tall, jagged, not flesh, not stone. They rose like spires of frozen fire, each one humming with deep resonance. The sound crawled into the bones, rattling ribs, shaking teeth loose in their sockets. The villagers froze. Their terror turned to awe. Some reached out their hands to the cold light, weeping silently as it touched their faces with a strange gentleness. The sky rippled violently. The rift quaked as the black mass pressed harder, straining to break free. Its scream tore through the air, a sound of rage, hunger, and defiance. The stars above flickered like dying embers. Then, from deep within the blue fire, something stirred. Not a figure, not yet, but a presence. Older than the creature above, older than the valley. Its voice did not speak in sound. It breathed directly into the marrow of every living thing. You are not the first, and you will not be the last. The ground shook harder. The chasms split wider, and something vast began to rise. The valley trembled, stone cracked. The blue fire bent upward, pulled toward the thing rising from the chasms. It was not shape, not form. It was suggestion. A silhouette shifting like smoke, never the same twice. Each glance brought a different face, a different outline, as though it wore every memory of fear at once. The villagers staggered back. Some collapsed to their knees. Others clutched their skulls, screaming, unable to bear the weight of its presence. Above, the black mass shrieked. Its wings tore open wider. Tendrils lashed, thrashing against the light, spitting venom that sizzled before it even touched the ground. Samuel dangled between them. His body was stretched thin, veins glowing with both dark and light. His mouth gaped in a silent cry as if torn between two masters. The presence from the chasm spoke again. Not in words, in pressure. Every heartbeat thudded louder as though drums pounded inside the chest. Every breath tasted of frost and ash. Release him. The black mass hesitated. Its countless eyes blinked in unison. The valley grew deathly still. And then, a single tendril snapped forward. It pierced Samuel's chest. Light and shadow exploded outward in a blinding wave. The villagers screamed as the shockwave tore through them. The mountains groaned, shedding avalanches. The rift in the sky yawned wider, splitting open like a wound that would never close. And from within Samuel's body, something began to claw its way out. The sound came first. A tearing, wet, hollow, like fabric ripping but deeper, as though reality itself was being pulled apart. Samuel's body arched. His skin blistered with both light and shadow. Fingers clawed at nothing, trembling as his chest split open in jagged lines. From within, not a creature, not a man. Something half-formed pushed outward, writhing against the shell that once contained it. The villagers could not look away. Eyes burned, minds reeled. Some bled from the nose, some whispered prayers. Others simply fainted, swallowed by the weight of the sight. The blue fire recoiled, hissing as if afraid. The shadow mass shrieked, triumphant yet trembling, as though even it had not expected what was being born. A hand emerged, long, stretched too thin. Fingers jointed wrong, bending in impossible directions. Another followed, claws scraping air that rang like iron struck against stone. Then a face pressed forward. But no features stayed in place, eyes swam, mouths appeared and vanished. Each flicker revealed someone different. A child, an elder, a stranger, a mirror. The thing looked out at them all, and in every gaze, each villager saw their own reflection staring back. The valley shook again, the rift above flared, spilling streams of black and white light that tangled like serpents. The being lifted itself higher. Each breath it took sounded like a chorus of voices, some crying, some laughing, some screaming. And then it spoke, not in a voice of all. The words echoed across the valley, not spoken, not heard, but felt. Every villager clutched their head. The sound wasn't sound at all. It was inside them, coursing through bone, threading through veins, tearing at thought itself. Torches flickered. The blue flames guttered low, shrinking like frightened animals. Shadows stretched long, bending toward the thing as though drawn to it. Samuel's body, what remained of it, hung in the air. His face was still there barely, but his eyes were gone. In their place, shifting voids swirled. The being tilted its head, its gaze swept over them. Each villager dropped to their knees, not from faith, not from reverence, but because their muscles simply stopped obeying. One woman tried to scream. Her mouth opened wide. Only silence poured out. The air itself seemed to thicken, pressing against lungs, weighing down chests. Breath became shallow. Every inhale a desperate fight. The rift above widened. Cracks webbered across the sky, glowing faintly. Stars bled through. But they weren't the stars they knew. They shifted. They moved. Patterns of eyes blinking open and shut in unison. The villagers realized the truth. The sky wasn't cracking. It was peeling back. And something on the other side was watching. The sky groaned. Not thunder. Not wind. A sound deeper. Older. The cracks spread wider, tearing open the night. The villagers trembled, eyes wide, faces pale in the eerie glow. Their torches sputtered, flames bowing low as if in surrender. Above them, the peeled sky rippled. Dark shapes shifted behind it, writhing, stretching. Each movement sent a pulse through the earth. The ground quivered. The air tasted of iron and ash. Samuel's body floated higher. His arms dangled like broken branches. The voids in his face stared outward, unblinking. From his chest, a thin beam of blue light pierced the heavens, feeding the widening wound in the sky. A child whimpered. Her mother pulled her close, pressing a hand over her mouth. Too late. The being tilted its head. It heard. It always heard. The villagers froze as the voids in Samuel's face turned toward them. The air pressed heavier. Eardrums throbbed. Hearts beat uneven, skipping in painful stutters. The crack in the sky split open fully, and through it something began to descend. Not a figure, not a beast, but a vast, endless form, too large for their eyes to contain, too endless for their minds to hold. They dropped faces in the dirt, because looking was unbearable, and yet the presence demanded they look, and so, slowly, against their will, their eyes rose. The villagers lifted their eyes, their pupils dilated, trembling, caught in something vast and merciless. The descending form bent the sky itself. Colours bled where no colour should exist. Shadows bent the wrong way, stretching toward the light instead of fleeing from it. The air thickened, syrupy, each breath burning like smoke. Flesh prickled with heat and frost at once. Bones ached as if the marrow inside were being pulled upward. Children cried soundlessly. Their voices were stolen before leaving their throats. From the rift, tendrils of light slithered down, not beams, but living cords, writhing and twisting. They coiled around Samuel's body, anchoring him, feeding on him. The villagers dared not move, yet one did. An elder, his spine bent, his voice hoarse with defiance. He lifted his hand. He spoke words no one had heard in generations. The sound cracked like stone breaking. It was not prayer, it was warning. The tendrils froze. The being paused. For the first time, the villagers felt it hesitate. And then, it turned its attention, not to the elder, but to all of them at once, their minds filled with whispers, foreign, hungry, unstoppable. The elder screamed as his body ignited with pale fire. The ground shook violently. The villagers clung to the earth as the rift swelled wider. Something was coming through. ChatGPT said the rift tore open wider. The air shuddered as if reality itself resisted the passage. A claw emerged first, not flesh, not metal, something in between. Its surface pulsed like molten glass, dripping light that hissed as it struck the soil. The villagers recoiled. The ground smoked where the droplets fell, releasing a bitter stench of sulphur and ash. Then came the sound, low, vibrating, a hum that crawled under the skin, rattling teeth, pressing against skulls. Children collapsed, mothers dragged them back. The men stood frozen, as though roots had grown from their feet into the earth. The claw gripped the edge of the rift. The soil cracked, stone split like paper. Another hand followed, longer, sharper, the size of a man, yet only one finger. Then the face, or what they thought was a face. A surface smooth as obsidian glass, featureless, yet every villager felt it staring directly at them. The whispers grew louder, not outside, inside their heads. Each whisper matched their own voice, repeating thoughts they never wanted spoken. Fear, regret, dark secrets. The villagers clutched their skulls, moaning, begging it to stop. The being stepped forward, its form too tall, too wide, impossible to measure. The rift strained behind it, screaming like metal tearing. And then it spoke. The sound was not words, it was hunger. ChatGPT said the rift tore open wider. The air shuddered as if reality itself resisted the passage. A claw emerged first. Not flesh, not metal, something in between. Its surface pulsed like molten glass, dripping light that hissed as it struck the soil. The villagers recoiled. The ground smoked where the droplets fell, releasing a bitter stench of sulphur and ash. Then came the sound, low, vibrating, a hum that crawled under the skin, rattling teeth pressing against skulls. Children collapsed. Mothers dragged them back. The men stood frozen, as though roots had grown from their feet into the earth. The claw gripped the edge of the rift. The soil cracked, stone split like paper. Another hand followed, longer, sharper, the size of a man, yet only one finger. Then the face, or what they thought was a face, a surface smooth as obsidian glass, featureless, yet every villager felt it staring directly at them. The whispers grew louder, not outside, inside their heads. Each whisper matched their own voice, repeating thoughts they never wanted spoken. Fear, regret, dark secrets. The villagers clutched their skulls, moaning, begging it to stop. The being stepped forward, its form too tall, too wide, impossible to measure. The rift strained behind it, screaming like metal tearing. And then it spoke. The sound was not words, it was hunger.